Hello everyone, how's it going? My name is Elias, and in today's video I'm just going to go over some of the books that I have recently read. Essentially, you can call this like my gigantic summer wrap-up. Yeah, without any further ado, let's just get right into it. I guess the first book I want to talk about is Winter's Lost by Patricia Briggs. This is the 13th, 14th book in the entire series. I'm just gonna pretty much regurgitate what I always say on this channel, is that this is a very cozy, paranormal, supernatural, I guess, romance series, and it primarily follows a young woman who is sort of like a shape-shifting coyote. This is the latest entry in the series, and funny enough, it came out during the summer. I think the release date was like pushed back or something because the entire setting of the book is set during like a snowstorm, and I just really love how Patricia Briggs weaves like these different cultures and folklore into a new story perspective that is something like fresh and new, and I just really love that. I always enjoy coming back into this world again. Each book feels like episodic and it sort of tackles its own problems, but this one primarily follows Mercy as she tries to traverse a deadly snowstorm that is caused by a god. If you're looking for found family, cozy times, almost like a nostalgic feeling, check out the series. It's been a long time coming if you're into like werewolves and vampires, and honestly, reading this series overall is like reading about these supernatural creatures for the first time. Like, you do know what werewolves and vampires are, but with a fresh take under this series and author. So I gave it, I think, a 5 out of 5 because I just enjoyed going back into the world again, just for entertainment purposes. But there you go. So the next book that I read was Jade City. I did talk about it a little bit in my mid-year freakout tag, but unfortunately, you guys, I did not enjoy this. I had such high expectations for this book. I think I expected too much out of this book, out of the series, and so therefore I will not be continuing on. Unfortunately, even though I do own the second book, people have said that it gets so much better, but I feel like I didn't like any of the characters. I just couldn't connect with them on any level at all. Maybe the only character I like was, I even forgot his name already, was the guy who was in school. I feel like he had the most interesting perspective, and I feel like instead of having the entire book told from these siblings, like if the majority of the book was told from his point of view, I think it would have been so interesting because there's just so much more nuance and facets of just different perspectives from his story point, and I just wanted more, you know, from his POV. But unfortunately, it was just split up into like these different perspectives of these siblings, and I get that that's like another cool entryway as well, but I just didn't care for them. I don't like the main character and the girl character. Oh my god, I literally forgot their names, which, you know, goes to show I didn't really care as much. The writing was cool. I don't know, I couldn't really get into the story. I didn't really like where it was going. Yeah, unfortunately for me, it was, I guess, a 2.5 out of 5 stars for me. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to pass with the entire series overall. This is getting ridiculous with the sun. I'm gonna move myself further out. Okay, I had to move away because the sun was streaming in and I'm dying. You guys, I don't understand how it's sweater weather. It's cold, nice, and chill, right? Supposedly. No. It's literally 90 degrees outside. You know, I'm still sitting facing out the window and the sun is streaming in and it's burning me, and I'm wearing shorts. All right, so the next book that we're gonna go over is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. So I read this for the Literally Dead Book Club a couple months ago, and I gotta say, this latest new entry from Riley Sager was a disappointment. And my surprise at this point. Riley Sager is that author where I continuously go for. I just continuously keep on reading from. Every single entry that he has come out since, I don't know, the last book that I probably enjoyed from him was like Home Before Dark, I think, which came out like 4 years ago in 2020. And every subsequent book that he has released after that has just been a flop, in my opinion. And this one sounded so promising, had such an interesting premise, and this one had a main male character because his previous books had all female characters, and he does not write female characters well. And so I was interested from this perspective. However, if you had taken out the names and the pronouns of all these characters, they all sound the same. Like, you could not differentiate from like a male or female character, in my opinion, and to me that was kind of a bummer. And in this latest entry, this man comes back to his hometown where his childhood friend was mysteriously kidnapped. Just disappeared one day when they were out camping in their backyard, and he wakes up one night to find a tear in the tent and his best friend missing. And so pretty much from then on, he carries this immense guilt with him, and he moves back and things starts to happen and unravel, and he finds that not all is as it seems, especially since the night that his friend was taken or missing, disappeared. This one just didn't go anywhere. It didn't have any twists and turns compared to his previous book. I think it's a very tame book in regards to if you're wanting to get into the thriller genre in of itself. I think it's a perfect entryway. Not a lot happens. It's not too heavy-handed. It's very methodical and slow. Honestly, perfect for any thriller newbie out there. I don't know, for a seasoned thriller author, and look, I'm not saying that every book that has come out has to be a twisty, great thriller read. I just feel like every book that has come out in the last like 4 years has just been, in my opinion. Here's to hoping that his next and latest book will wow me again. He's just an author where I just continuously read from, without fail, every year. I know I say, oh my god, Riley, I'm just gonna give up on you. I'm not gonna read any more books from him. I mean, what can I say? Until he releases another book, I'll be waiting. I guess you can sort of call me a dedicated, loyal fan. Alright, so the next book that I read was Dungeon Crawler Carl. This one is another lit RPG that was recommended to me, and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. It's set in like an apocalyptic world where this man wakes up to find an alien species invading Earth. It's not just like one country or one continent, one part of the world. It's like the entire world at the same time. The entire human population undergoes like this trial akin to the Hunger Games, if you will, underneath the Earth. So they're all trapped in like this dungeon type of scenario, the setting, and it's like massive, and it has like 20 levels or something like that, and every single human being, every being that is in the dungeon is essentially televised. I guess I should say every willing participant is televised to just different species out there in the entire galactic universe. And so we follow our main character named Carl, who is trying to traverse and trying to survive along with his ex-girlfriend's cat. Their dynamic duo is just so funny to read from. The cat also gains the ability to talk and other abilities as well, as we, go along with this dungeon, as they try to survive during a set time during this one particular dungeon and try to, I guess, go down, because at a certain point, there's one dungeon that no one has ever been able to pass or survive in. So yeah, that's where I'm at this point. I finished book 1. I really enjoyed it. It's really fun. The next book that I read was Brat by Gabriel Smith, and I gave this 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I kind of want to get back into the literary fiction space, that particular genre, because I know that there are so many hidden gems like out there, and I really enjoyed this one. This one is a very dark and humorous, metafictionalized take on grief, especially with our main character who moves back into his parents' house after the death of his father, and he soon begins to experience like a supernatural phenomenon in which his skin and his body begins to break apart, sort of paralleling the house that he's in, his parents' home, just his relationship with his family, specifically with his brother as well. I really thought originally this book was gay, but it actually isn't. I mean, that didn't take away my enjoyment from this book. I just wanted I thought this was like a queer story, I just wanted some of the elements from the LGBT MCU out there, but that was not the case. But still, really enjoyed it, 4 out of 5. So the next book that I read was The Tainted Cup, and this one was a really interesting book. This one is a fantasy book with a huge mystery in the background. I've never read a fantasy book where it primarily focuses on solving a mystery. Think Sherlock Holmes, but make it fantasy. So this book primarily follows these two main characters trying to solve a series of mysterious killings involving deadly plants. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. There's so much going on, and I thought the world was so interesting. It sort of reminded me of the movie Annihilation with Natalie Portman, and I know that the movie is also based off a book as well. I really enjoyed this book's writing style and the characterization. I thought it was just really interesting how the author weaved these two subgenres together, because mostly in fantasy, it's mostly like action, magic, and all that, but there's very little magic or action in this case. What made it really interesting for me were the characters and the character dynamic between our older character and our younger main character, who is sort of like a version of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And also, of course, aside from these mysterious killings, they also have to navigate sort of the world's government, and also just navigate this really detailed political mess that they're in. And I thought the whole political aspect really brought another just interesting, cool layer to the story overall. So I read this because of a recommendation from one of my patrons, Caleb. Shout out to Caleb. And I am really looking forward to the sequel. I think it's already out, and I think I gave this one also a 4 out of 5 as well. So the next book I'm going to talk about is A Rip Through Time, and this one was unexpected. It's a romance. I am typically not a huge romance reader, but it has one of my favorite elements to read about, and that is time travel, specifically time traveling to the past. So we have our main character who is a detective trying to prepare for the death of her grandmother. After an altercation with a serial killer, she gets transported back in time into the body of a woman who was also being murdered at the same time. And so we have our main character trying to navigate her situation, also meeting the master of the house. Obviously, it doesn't get into that territory where she has to call him master. It's not like this dominant subtype situation. No, it doesn't get that spicy. It's just, different. Okay, you see the sun, right? You see the sun. I'm trying to move away from the sun, but it just keeps on coming. Anyways, I thought the book was fine. It was fun. The premise was interesting. I didn't really care about the characters or the romance, but I just wanted to read about how our main character would navigate the situation that she's in. Some of the things that she does, it's very questionable. She does solve the mystery of the serial killer during that time frame. There was an interesting aspect that was introduced into the book as a twist, because there was an aspect of this book that I read before, but from a YA book. Oh my god, that book was terrible, by the way. If you have ever read anything by Carrie Maniscalco, I gave this one, I think, a 3.75, not exactly a 4, but it was, I guess, a little above average for me. So if you're looking for a romance about a woman going back in time, sort of like Outlander, if you will, but trying to solve a serial killer murder case back in that time frame, I guess you can say like the early 1900s or something like that. So the next book that I want to quickly talk about is The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer. I thought this was such a beloved gem. I loved it so much. I love the characters, the story, everything about it. This one is essentially Narnia, but gay. That's pretty much it. Honestly, that's what got me picking this book for my book of the month pick, because I heard that it's literally Narnia, very whimsical. It's about these two boys who go missing in this part of the woods, only to be found months later, confused and dazed, speaking a new different language. And then we fast track years later when they're adults, but no longer exactly on speaking terms. One of the boys is approached by a young woman trying to find her missing sister, and so he invokes the help of his friend, and so our trio once more ventures into the same woods where these boys have disappeared to find the missing sister. Anyways, in contrast to how I explained it, this book is very wholesome, it's very whimsical, and very cozy. Honestly, perfect for that autumnal read, which I can't relate to, obviously. Highly recommend. I give it a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it, really loved it. It's just about finding your own story, or even continuing on that forgotten story that you left behind as a child. I really hope that the author would, I don't know, do another story in the same universe or continue on with our same characters. 5 out of 5 for me. Okay, so the next set of books that I read, Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is the UK edition where they split the books into 2 books, essentially. Okay, let me give you a little backstory. So I read The Way of Kings, I think it was last year. I had such a hard time getting into it. I think I completed just one of these books and I still didn't know what was going on, but I did. I pushed through. It was because I read The Way of Kings during a 10-11 hour plane ride. And so I was like, you know what? I think the only push for me to read or continue on with the series would be to read it on a plane ride, and that's what I did. So I read The Way of Kings and I finished the second part and I enjoyed it. I think I'm picking up on what Brandon is doing with this set of books in general, or with his books in general. I think that he sets up a lot of things, right? Going into the book, all these different characters, the world building, only to bring it all together in a very explosive finale. That's what he does, and I'm not mad about it. In The Way of Kings, it was very, very iffy. I was so much in doubt. I had so many expectations. None of them were met until I read, I guess, the last half of that second part of the book. And I gotta say, that's what I did for Words of Radiance. And you guys, I finished this book in Paris. So I read this on the way to Paris and I finished it in Paris. It was amazing. It was a 10 out of 10. This one was just more elevated and just so much better than The Way of Kings for me. I loved every second of it. These books have so much hype. I've heard so many things about Brandon Sanderson this and Brandon Sanderson that. And I'm always like eye rolling in the back of my mind. I'm like, guys, whatever, okay? Like, I'm not interested. I did read Mistborn, like I think 10 years ago or something like that. I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. I just never continued on with the series. I really, really loved the direction in which the story went with all the characters. I also did read Warbreaker before I finished Words of Radiance. And so I read The Way of Kings. I was told to read Warbreaker because there are some crossover. I'm not going to say what or who. I was actually gratified. I was so happy that I read Warbreaker before I read Words of Radiance. I thought Warbreaker was fine. I think I gave it 4 out of 5. I thought it was a fine standalone. It wasn't on par as this Stormlight Archive series books, but it was still fine nonetheless. But I read and finished Words of Radiance. Oh my god, it was so good. Okay, my favorites from here are, obviously, Kaladin and Shallan. I really, really like the spren. I think they are so interesting. So we have Syl and Pattern, and I think they are honestly the best aspects, the best characters of the books for me. I like the spren more than the humans, okay? The humans, for me, there are just too many of them. Too many humans and too many POVs. And even though I do like that there are POVs from different parts of the world, from these different characters who are either coming back again or just a one-off character, I do like reading from them, but there are just way too many characters, way too many side characters that I have a hard time keeping track of. And if you're anything like me, where you continue a series a year later, you're not going to remember or even understand the longevity of these other side characters, okay? I think it's just a little too convoluted for me. But I'm not here for those side characters. They're here to build up our main characters. And so I finished reading The Words of Radiance in Paris, and I immediately, when I went back home on that plane ride, I dived headfirst into another novella, Edgedancer, and Oathbringer, which I'm going to talk about next. So I read Edgedancer before Oathbringer because there's a certain character that appears and then has her story expanded in Edgedancer that I love. She's my favorite character. She is literally my hero, my favorite character, because all she does is eat. Her name is Lift, and her spren is so interesting, Wendell. Lift and Wendell are my favorite characters in the Stormlight archive so far. Okay, I really love these two, and I love their dynamic. I guess I want a full-blown book from these two characters. We got a little under 300 pages of our two characters. It was a very short novella. I flew through it during the plane ride. It was a 5 out of 5 for me, and I absolutely devoured it. It was a great novella, but I wanted more, you know? I guess I was told that the novella was optional, but to me, I think it's mandatory that you read Edgedancer before going to Oathbringer, because there are some plot points that are sort of glossed over, and if you didn't read Edgedancer, you kind of would be like, that's it, that's all I'm given, that's the answer that you're just gonna give me. I think it's very simplified and not at all expanded upon in Oathbringer. So you definitely need to read Edgedancer, which is a novella. It was very confusing. I had to do like a whole extensive research and ask like a bunch of people, what's the reading order, what worked for you, what are you gonna do, what am I supposed to do? And so I read Way of Kings, Warbreaker, Words of Radiance, Edgedancer, and then Oathbringer. So that was the reading order that worked for me and that supposedly worked for a lot of other people. The sun is killing me. I'm gonna move positions again. Okay, anyways, so Lift and Wendell are my favorite characters, and then we have Shalyn and Pattern, and then Kaladin and Syl. You guys, I'm so sorry, but Dalinar, before reading Oathbringer, okay, I did not care for Adolin, I did not care for Dalinar, I did not really care for the Alethi parts. I didn't really care about this group of people and their kingdom and their politics, okay? I was here for the minorities, even though they're not really minorities, but I was also here for the spren and their counterparts more than the other humans. And I guess that they are important and pivotal to the story, but I literally could not care for them. I found so many similar references to my favorite series of all time, which is The Realm of the Elderlings, with some of the characters, specifically the Fitz and the Fool, with Kaladin, the Wits, Dalinar, Verity, like literally so many similarities. And in my opinion, The Realm of the Elderlings came first and did it better. I said what I said, I stand on that hill. The Realm of the Elderlings. Reading as many books as I have from Brandon Sanderson, his long ass books, literally over 1,000 pages by the way. I am so happy and proud of myself that I completed so many pages in a short amount of time, but no one can even come close or does it like Robin Hobb. Brandon, I'm so sorry, he does tell a good story, he knows how to do action sequences, he knows how to do characterization and world building. However, Robin Hobb just does it better. Way better in my opinion. The way she evokes so many different emotions in me is just a compliment on its own, versus like Brandon, even though I do vastly enjoy his books like 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, whatever, Robin Hobb just does it better. Immaculate. I think she's a blueprint for a lot of fantasy for me. Even though I have read older fantasy, let's just say Lord of the Rings for example, Robin Hobb just does it better in every way, in every fantasy aspect. I'm so sorry, but after finishing the last trilogy in The Realm of the Elderlings, okay, listen, I'm still going to make a video on the last trilogy, so just stay tuned. But you guys, if you guys have not yet read the Farseer trilogy, which is the first set of books in that series, what the hell are you doing? Okay? If you take my recommendations seriously, okay, please go and pick it up. Please go pick up the first trilogy, the first book, which is called The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I know that it's a commitment, 16-book series, okay, but Brandon Sanderson, each book is literally over 1,000 pages. Kind of insane. Honestly, it kind of evens out if you ask me, because Robin Hobb, it does get really long, but it doesn't get over 1,000 pages long, okay? But let's go ahead and go into our last and final book that I just finished, Oathbringer. So I have this edition, okay? So I had bought the Way of Kings and the Words of Radiance, the UK editions, because I liked the covers more. There's no way I'm bringing this around, carrying it around, reading it, especially like on a plane. There's no way. This book weighs like 10 pounds already. The reason why I got this, I think, was back in the day, everyone was hyping up Brandon Sanderson, and I specifically remember all the hype regarding this book in general because I saw it at Target one day. Okay, I'm just gonna take the cover off. Look at the artwork. It's on the other end of the book as well. And also, she's signed, you guys. She is signed, okay, by Brandon Sanderson. I didn't actually realize this until I opened it up the other day because I was like, should I read from this edition? But I was like, nah. Most of the books that I read are all in Kindle, and I did read some parts of the book physically just because I have the copies and I was like, why not? This in and of itself is sort of like a collector's edition or item. And so far, this is my least favorite Stormlight Archive book entryway in the series. We are primarily following this one particular character that I do not care for. However, my mind was sort of changed on this character at the end of the book. So this book, this hefty Bible tome of a book, primarily shifts its focus from Kaladin and Shallan, even though they do get focus on here. We're primarily focusing on Dalinar Kholin. You guys, I did not care for this character previously in the entryway of this book. Majority of this book, until we got to the end, I was like, every time we got to his POV, his chapter, I'm like, oh my god, I would literally try to figure out how many chapters I need to read, like speed through, in order to get through our next set of characters or POV. What was really interesting for me was how I perceived Dalinar originally in the previous books. He was sort of like this father hero action figure in the previous books, right? But when I got into this one, I kind of felt like I was reading a POV from an irredeemable character at this point. However, I guess that sort of thinking shifted when we got to the end. I'm not gonna say what happens, of course, but I thought that whole POV was really interesting and fascinating to read from, even though I didn't agree with some points that were brought forth for this character or what has happened because of what this character has done. But I get it. I understand it to a degree, you know? I mean, do I like this character now and want him to succeed? Kinda, yeah. I'm very interested to see where the story will take me next in the next book, which is called The Rhythm of War. This book, this third entry, gets very heavy in politics, which I really enjoyed. And this one sort of leans more into the political aspect of the government, facilities, kingdom, characters, ruling, class, and all that. I don't want to say it, but if you know the main big twist in here, I did have my reservations about it regarding book 2 going into Words of Radiance. I think Words of Radiance for me so far had the biggest trajectory in terms of like character development and what happens. And I love a huge trajectory in terms of character development. I guess each book has like a different aspect for me to love from. So yeah, there you have it. I do know that I do want to read Dawn Shard before going into Rhythm of War. I like how you have to read a novella before you get into thick, bigger tome. It's like a palate cleanser, if you will. So yeah, I understand now. I get it. I get all the hype. I understand where everyone is coming from, like placing Brandon Sanderson as one of their favorite authors of all time. Like I finished The Realm of the Elderlings earlier this year. Been reading a lot of like lit RPG as well. And finally, Brandon Sanderson. Like I am truly in my fantasy era at this point, and just getting a tad bit burned out. But that's okay. That's just me just needing to take a step back, maybe reading different genres. But there you have it, folks. That is pretty much my summer reading wrap up. Please let me know down below, what other books have you been reading and loving lately? Have you read any Brandon Sanderson's books? What have you been reading and hating? Please let me know. Again, as always, I will leave a link to my Patreon down below. We will be reading for October Kill for Me, Kill for You. So I'm really looking forward to it because it has like huge high ratings on Goodreads, and the premise sounds very reminiscent of The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, one of my first like highly rated thriller books that I've ever read. So I'm really looking forward to this. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with a new video.